Hello, beautiful. How are you today? And welcome to another Thursday Talk in the Organizing Mindset podcast with me, Suzanna Kaye, where we chat about all the mindsets behind our organizing and getting things done. I'm glad that you're here. As you hop on, let me know who you are and where you're joining me from. I see Tony's here. Hi, Tony. Good to have you here. Welcome, welcome. All right. Well, before we get started, just a reminder, tonight is the last night today is the last day through the night of the holiday sale. And this is the one time that you can get the physical Spark Life Binder, the physical action file, and the physical small step cards shipped to you and get them on sale. This is actually the only time I've ever done a sale on the physical Spark Life Binder or action file, and I don't know that I'll ever do it again for the physical one. We will see. So if you are interested in that physical Spark Life Binder or action file or the small step cards for yourself or a gift, then make sure to grab them today. The links are in the YouTube comments, so you can get to those sale pages, because at the end of the night tonight, 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time, that sale ends, and it may not ever come back again. Definitely not until next year if it does come back. All right. So today we are talking about small steps within your organizing. This is something where if you have been following me for any amount of time, then you've probably heard me talk about small steps a lot. So small steps are basically just when you break down a bigger project, a bigger task, even a bigger thought into something smaller in a series of smaller steps, smaller broken down pieces in order to complete it. And the reason I talk about this so much is because it has so many different psychological benefits that help with procrastination, overwhelm, and it actually speeds up getting the job done. So that's why I talk about the small steps so often. I had made the small step cards in order to make it more fun and like a game to declutter your home. But I wanted to talk about the why. Why are small steps so helpful within your organizing and your productivity? And a little bit about how you can break things down into small steps. So that is the ride we are going on together today. I see in the chat area, welcome to Joyce. Good morning from snowy Virginia. And oh, wonderful. RC Gray says, ordered the action file with extras. Yay! Oh, I know you're going to love it. I'm excited. Wonderful. Perfect. So let's get started talking about the small steps. So like I mentioned, small steps are simply, that's my term for breaking down a larger task, project, thought process into smaller pieces and then working on those pieces one at a time to get through them. You've probably done this a million times on your own without even realizing it, but you may not have applied it to as many different types of projects or tasks that you can, especially within productivity and organization. A lot of times we think that we have to finish a large project all at once. Yeah, it feels great, right? It feels great to finish a large project all at once. But how often can that really happen? Because we don't always have the time, the energy, both mental and physical energy, to do that entire project all at once. So instead, we tend to put it off until we quote unquote have the time. If you're like me, I never have the time. I have to create the time, or I don't create the time. The time's just not laying there ready for me to discover it. So when we use small steps, that overcomes that barrier. And it is still an amazing feeling, an amazing win, an excitement when you finish the project. It's just not all in one sitting that you have to do it, but you're still going to get that big dopamine hit. In fact, you'll get several of them, and we'll talk about that. Welcome to Brana. Good to see you in San Diego. And Melody is here from Northern Virginia. Welcome, welcome. Okay, so let's talk about small steps, right? Small steps, and I don't have these banners already copied and pasted into the banners. I was not able to. I broke down my week into small steps and was not able to get through this part, but I will add them as I go. So this way you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so small steps. They're fantastic if you feel overwhelmed with a large project. So when we're overwhelmed, one of two things can happen. Either our brain can completely shut down and we go into procrastination. If you've ever felt like you're just paralyzed, that's overwhelm, right? There's something that's just too big for your brain to process. That is one way, and the most common way, that we think about overwhelm affecting us. Now, there's also the other way. There are some people where when you get overwhelmed, you go into action, which is fantastic, except when you're too overwhelmed, you don't go into informed action. You just act in order to act to reduce that threat, right? Whatever is overwhelming, you just want to conquer it and make it gone. So you don't always make the best decisions. So that kind of overwhelm with a large project, yes, you'll get through the project, but you probably will regret a lot of the choices you made, and you won't be making your optimal decisions. So both types of overwhelm are actually dangerous to get things done. Whether it's your brain shuts down and you go into inaction, or your brain hits that active adrenaline and you go into not thought out well action. So when you're overwhelmed with a large project, that's a great time to break it down into small steps. So here's an example. I worked with a client once who had literally an entire large storage unit filled with papers to sort, because it had just been, life was tough. It just kept piling up and piling up. So this storage unit full of papers was, as you can imagine. So back in the day when I used to do one-on-one organizing, she hired me, I came in, and we worked through that storage unit. Now, for her, understandably, it was very overwhelming. She didn't know where to start. If you've ever felt like I don't even know where to start, your brain does not know how to filter through to figure out what the steps even are. So what I did is I came in and I broke it down into small steps for us. And we worked on small steps with what I call milestones. So you can do a series of small steps. A large project such as a storage unit, what we did is we broke that large project of organizing. There had to be over 100 different boxes, like moving boxes full of papers at least. We broke that down into smaller steps. So we decided, 1, we're going to categorize. Step 2, we're going to sort through it and create the actual file system based on what's in those categories. Step 3, we're going to build that file system. Step 4, we're going to fill that file system, right? And then step 5 was cleanup. So we had these small steps, which are still kind of big, right? And that happens. Sometimes your small steps are actually kind of big and still overwhelming, but we had this series of small steps. I call these sort of milestones because they're not quite small enough to really chew on and get through without the overwhelm yet. But we know, okay, step 1, categorize. Okay, we can handle that and break that down into smaller steps. So if you're overwhelmed with a large project, break it down into the smaller steps. If those small steps still feel 10 small steps, right? So if you can't break it down into 10 small steps that feel doable, that aren't overwhelming, break each of those steps down further. And you've created milestones so you can track your progress, but break each of those down into small steps. And now they become a mini project, right? So instead of looking at the entire storage unit as a project, we now had, what was that, 5 projects, right? We had project 1, categorizing. Project 2 was creating the file system categories based on the categories that we created. Project 3, you see how they each became their own little project? So now project 1, categorizing, right? That's a little bit less overwhelming, still overwhelming with 100 boxes. So we broke that down into small steps. And those small steps was, how were we going to categorize? This is where that onion method, if you have the Paper Path course, then you know what I'm talking about. I use the onion method with her to make categorizing that many papers and sorting through them and keep or go so much easier. But we broke it down in those small steps where, okay, categorizing, what are the small steps we can do for categorizing now? Okay, well, first up, we can create a space, an area for each of us on the floor with some boxes with categories, right? Step 2, we could decide what the categories were going to be for this first round of sorting. And we did some nice broad categories. The first one was keep or go, right? All that we cared about was, does this need to be kept or does this need to go? If it's an old newspaper ad that just happened to still be in there from the junk mail, it could go. If it was old medical records, blood work or something, it was in keep. And that was our first sort, right? So created a space, decided what the categories were, and then started categorizing just into those categories. So that was 3 steps. That right there, those were small enough steps that overwhelm for the large project reduced significantly. And we knew our milestone was categorizing. Once we were done categorizing all the papers, we hit that first milestone. That was our little mini project that we finished, right? So by breaking those down into small steps, we avoided getting stuck in the overwhelm, the paralysis, or the making decisions that were not optimal because we just wanted to reduce the threat. That looks like, if you're dealing with papers, that would look like, I don't know, I'm just going to get rid of the whole box without looking at it, or something like that, right? I don't know if I need to keep it, I'm just going to let it go. Those are when your brain is no longer firing on the optimal level and you probably need to step away. You're probably overwhelmed or exhausted. So when you're overwhelmed with a large project, breaking it down into small steps, sometimes it has to be milestones to make it smaller projects and then small steps. That helps your brain to not be overwhelmed by the project. So that's one benefit of small steps, is when you have a large project. Now, another benefit is the time commitment. Now, this is one that I personally fall into this often, and I hear this all the time in the membership, in the emails that you send me, just chatting and telling me how you're doing. Time commitment. So our brains look at a project, and one of the calculations they make right away is, how much time is this going to take? And we might not always be accurate. My husband always thinks it'll be faster. I always think it'll take longer. Somewhere that time commitment of the larger project can stop us in our tracks. Because, for example, if you looked at that storage unit, or even that first milestone, let's look at the first milestone that we set of categorizing the papers. That right there, for over 100 boxes, is a big time commitment, right? So what our brain often does is it thinks, okay, that's going to take a lot of time. I don't have that time right this moment, so I will do it later. Now, later, for a large project, rarely comes. Even if that large project is simply cleaning out the fridge, right? That's one of those things where your brain looks at it and it's a time commitment and it thinks, I don't have time to do it right now, I'll do it later. And later does not happen. You wait so much longer. So when we break things down into small steps, that's now little mini projects, right? So you can do part of a task and get it started within a smaller period of time. So here's an example of that. If, for example, I was going to work on, the Paper Path course is an example, actually. If I wanted to redo my file systems, right, and just focus on the file cabinets, but if I'm thinking I want to redo my file cabinets, I want to take it out, make new labels, put them in a new order, then that's kind of a big project where your brain might think, oh, that's going to take some time. Initially, you might think, okay, well, I will do that later. I want to do it, but I can't do it right now, so I'll do that later. However, later, again, very rarely comes. When you do have that time later, there's probably something else that comes up, or you might want time for yourself. So instead of just putting it off and putting it off, which could take maybe a year or two or more, you can break it down into small steps so you can get started and chip away at that project. And then when you do have a nice big chunk of time, you could either finish up the project or you could spend some time enjoying your time with yourself. So when we chip away at the project, such as redoing our file cabinet, then on the screen I've got fireworks. It's very excited. So when we chip away at that project of redoing the filing cabinet, then we can chip away at it by creating steps based on time if we wanted to. Like maybe you decide, I want every step to be 15 minutes or less, because that can fit into my day. I can do at least one step a day and find 15 minutes. Maybe I do it, while my coffee's brewing. So what do those steps look like? What can I do for 15 minutes to move it forward and still be able to remember where I left off so that the next day I can continue? So for redoing your filing cabinet, maybe, the first 15 minutes is, if you've got the Paper Path course, you just print off the list of these are all the different files to put in your file cabinet, and this is the order to put them in. Maybe that's your first 15-minute step, right? Then your second 15-minute step might be, I'm just simply going to put together file folders and put the labels on my file folders. The next step might be, okay, now I'm going to just transfer one file folder of papers per day into the new file folders. So you see how if you are breaking it down into small time periods, small steps take less time, then you can actually get a little bit done each day. So if you had, say, 30 small steps to just redo your file cabinet, it probably would not even be 30, but if you had 30 small steps at 15 minutes each, if you do one each day, then within 1 month you're finished. Versus if you're thinking about the time commitment and doing it all in one chunk for a larger project, I bet within that month you've not found the time. So you're not making any progress on it, right? So small steps help because it breaks it into smaller time commitments, which can fit into our day. So we're going to make much more progress than if we wait to do the larger project. Another part of small steps. Actually, you know what? Before I talk about this one, I want to go over the comments. Let's see. I wanted to say hi to Sue. Hi, Sue. Welcome. And we have Tony says, I can definitely relate to this. As you know, with me setting up my index card system. Yes. And we've been talking in the membership. You have been doing great with breaking that down into small steps instead of making it a big project. I love that. So you can speak with experience on that. Lori says, greetings from cold, icy Cleveland, Ohio. Hi, Lori. Bonnie says, I need to find holiday socks for my Weight Watchers workshop. I funneled through boxes, found 2 sock candidates, and decided to toss some other clothes. Oh, that is fantastic. That's a success story. Yay, Bonnie. I love it. I love it. Good job. So with the small steps, like, hey, Bonnie, that's a small step in itself. You don't even have to plan out your small steps in a really structured way. Sometimes a small step can be just open a box and look at 5 things. If you've got a bunch of boxes to go through, open a box, pick 5 things, look at them, make a decision, put away the keep, let go of the let go. That's a small step. And if you keep doing that each day, then those boxes are going to whittle down very quickly versus waiting or having a big chunk of time to do all the boxes, to do one box. So that's a great example of our small steps. Great job. So speaking of having that looser structure, sometimes we get blocked about finishing a project or even starting a project because we don't know all of the answers to whatever might come up in the future, right? That big storage unit full of papers, trust me, both Lynn and I, as a professional organizer for over 20 years, even I had that initial fear of, oh my goodness, I don't know what we're going to do with all these papers. I didn't know. A secret? As a professional organizer working in people's homes, I would go into so many homes where it was overwhelming with stuff because it's much more common than you think, for one. So you're not alone. But I would go into so many homes where it was truly an overwhelming space. And my first thought would be, I don't know how this is going to end up. I almost never knew how it was going to end up. That is okay. That's absolutely okay. I, as the organizer, never knew all of the future information, but I did not need to know that future information because I'm not there yet. I don't know what I don't know, right? So the difference between myself as the organizer and my client, the homeowner, is a lot of times the homeowner or whoever is dealing with it will look at it and let the not knowing shut them down, right? They let that fear tell them that they're going to hit the stuck spot. They won't know the answer for that. They don't want to get started because then what if they get stuck in the middle? The professional organizer, a good professional organizer, also feels that way, but we have faith that when we get to a spot where we're not certain, we'll figure it out at the time. We know that we can get started with what we know right now. So I walk into a cluttered room, or in this case, the storage unit full of papers. I knew that I would not know all the answers every step of the way. But I knew that I knew what gets started. And as I hit things that I was not certain about, either things would become clear as I went, most of the time it does, or I could stop and figure it out at that time. But I would not let it stop me from getting started or keep moving. So small steps, when you break it down into those small steps, it helps narrow your focus. So instead of seeing the whole project, the entire storage unit of papers, you see categorizing. Okay, I'm only categorizing papers. And quite honestly, we did not even look at 100 boxes to categorize. We each kind of took a box, and that was our focus. Categorize this box, and then grab another box. Categorize this box. So as we were working, we weren't looking at the 100 boxes and thinking about what we might hit that we would not know. We were thinking of, I know what the next step is, so I'm going to do that step. And at the end of that step, I know what that next step is. I'll do that step. So when we don't know all the future information, it often shuts us down. That causes us fear, and we don't even want to go there. But by making it smaller steps, you're narrowing your focus to just that part of the project, right? You only need to focus on that step. And when your steps are small enough, not knowing some of the future information is easy because it's just usually one or two pieces. It's just enough to finish that step. You don't have to worry about all project, just that one little milestone or step you're working on. So when you break it down into small steps, that gives you a narrower focus. So even if you don't know all the future information for the entire project or all the future steps, you know what step you're working on, and usually you know what the next step is. You might not know all the answers for it, but you know what it is. And that narrows it down. So if you're not somebody who likes to structure with, writing down your milestones and then breaking it down into steps, that's absolutely fine. What is the next step? That's all you have to figure out. You can figure it out as you go. Do a step, figure out, okay, that's done. What's the next step? Do that. Okay, what's the next step? Going through the boxes, great. 5 items, pull 5 items. That's my step. What's the next step? I don't know what to do with this thing. I'll figure it out. But there's only 5 to choose from. So not knowing all the future information, small steps helps bring that to a much more reasonable amount of information that you might not know, but usually by the time you have gotten to it, you've already figured out that information. If not, it's at least not overwhelming, so you can still get through it without a lot of problems. So we talked about small steps, helps with overwhelm. So if you're feeling overwhelmed and either paralyzed or going into action, but in a way that you're not making the best decisions, you're more just determined to reduce the threat. Breaking it down into small steps will help you become either no longer paralyzed and be able to move, or make better decisions and not have that fear, overwhelm, frantic action. We talked about, so that was overwhelmed. We talked about time commitment. A large project, whether it is cleaning out the fridge or a storage unit full of papers, either way, our brain sees the whole project time commitment. And we rarely have that much time. So when we break it into small steps, we can do one small step at a time and complete the project much faster than we would if we were waiting until we happen to have that much time. We talked about not knowing all of the future information, how that can shut us down, right? That causes a lot of fear. When we use small steps and break it into smaller pieces, that reduces our focus to just that area. And that's much more doable to figure out anything that we don't know and be able to work through that. We don't have to worry about the rest of the project, right? So I've got two more quick features of small steps, and then I'll talk about some ways that you can actually break things into small steps a little bit too. But I wanted to say, CJYT says, yes, that old analysis paralysis holds me back. Good morning, y'all. Yes, analysis paralysis is absolutely the word for it, because when we're stuck in our head trying to figure everything out in our head, we're not acting. We're not moving forward. We're just churning in our head and getting nothing done, and that just makes us more and more paralyzed. So the narrower you can make that focus, where it's just that next step or the milestone, that will reduce that analysis paralysis, because you've got just that one area. You can worry about the rest when you get to it. Love that. Melanie says, hi from sunny Northridge, California. Aw, she says, I've been very sickly the past 8 days, still not up to par, but I did a little small step of one day moving all bags of yard sale items to one area. Yay! Oh, good. When you're sick, then definitely that's time to take care of yourself and not to do too much. But I love that you were able to do a little step. When you're sick, small steps are the most important things, even if it's just getting yourself fed. Step 1. Grab the can of soup. Step 2, put it in a microwave. So I hope you're feeling better. I know you're still not up to par, but I hope you feel better quickly. Jennifer says, always start with what is trash or what I can get rid of first. Amen, sister. Yes, that is one of the easiest steps to start with, is if you know whatever you know is trash or you know you can get rid of, get that out of the way first. Love that. Melanie says, the next day was to bag and label the various smaller bags, and the next day was to move all of it to my car. My next step is to reorganize the little storage area and then put those bags there. My goodness, you did all steps and you were sick. That's amazing. I love that those small steps, even when you're sick, you can get through them. Good job. Tony says, this is nice. A necessary planning session to eliminate chaos and increase energy. Absolutely. And you don't need to plan out all of your steps for the entire project at the beginning. That, again, you go into analysis paralysis, you're not actually doing any work, so you're not moving forward, you're just churning. But if you plan out what your major milestones are, those bigger steps, and then in that first one, what are the steps for that? That is a great starting off point. Not only that, but if you plan it all from the beginning, you're going to learn things along the way that change some of them, and then you're just going to have to redo stuff. So don't plan all of your steps at once. Plan those major milestones, those bigger steps, and then that first milestone, you can plan those steps, and then you are good to go. And yes, I love it. It eliminates chaos and increases energy. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, CJTYT she says, it's just me, Suzanna. CJ. Hi, CJ. Thought it might be you, but it was not positive. Wonderful. Okay, so next up, the last two things, right? Create a habit of small wins. So you've probably heard of dopamine. That's what's going on in your brain, the little chemical that makes you happy, right? We love dopamine. Dopamine is what causes that feeling when you finish a big project and you're all excited and at the top of the world and you have all that energy and you just feel lighter. That is our friend dopamine. But you don't have to do the whole big project to get that dopamine. Our brains and our bodies, because it affects both, really crave dopamine, and it will do anything to get it. It gets us in trouble sometimes because sometimes the wrong things start giving us dopamine, but our bodies want dopamine. So if we can use that in our favor to retrain ourselves, then let's use it. So dopamine fires in your brain when it's kind of like your brain's reward system, right? You did something that your brain's decided is worth a reward, and it gives you dopamine, and you feel happy and excited and all the good things. So with your brain's reward system, we want to train our brain to look at things a little bit differently when we're looking at our organization or our productivity, right? So think about it like with your dog. If you want to train your dog to do an obstacle course, then you're not going to try to train your dog to do the full obstacle course and give him a treat at the end, even if it's a big treat, right? You don't give him a T-bone steak when he's finished the whole obstacle course for the first time. That's not very motivating, right? Because the dog has to learn so much before it even gets to that T-bone steak. And we are the same. That huge project, whether it's cleaning out the fridge or the storage unit full of papers, having the reward just at the end, that is way too far away, right? Even if it's a big reward, that is not very motivating, and it's not going to see you through, especially on those early parts of the project. So what do we do with a dog? With a dog, we're going to give him treats along the way, right? Little rewards as he finishes or learns something. So with that first jump, you're going to give him a treat as he goes over the jump. The first time he completes the jump, he gets a treat. The next thing, he gets a treat. The next obstacle, he gets a treat. So he's getting these little treats all the way to the end. He can still have the T-bone when he's done with the whole thing, but he wants to continue because he's getting these little treats along the way. So it's much more fun, and his brain says, keep going. So we can use that concept for ourselves and give ourselves these little dopamine hits by breaking things down into small steps. So imagine you have a large project. You are sorting a lot of papers and you don't have it broken down into small steps, right? So there's no point where your brain sees a win. There's no point where your brain sees an accomplishment to celebrate because there's no small step. There's nothing broken down. It's just this big project. Yes, you might be completing chunks of it, but your brain does not get that trigger of, oh, wow, this is an accomplishment. So when we break it down into small steps, though, that gives your brain those little milestones for, okay, well, you just did a small step. That's a little tiny burst of, yeah, I did that one, right? Maybe it's create your categories. Yes, I created my categories. Check. It's like checking off the to-do list. It just feels so good, right? Those milestones, those are bigger little checkpoints for your brain, where when you finish that milestone, you finish categorizing all the papers, then your brain sees that because you defined it as this milestone, this project of its own, sees that as a win. So your brain gives you that dopamine hit. You feel really amazing. Is the project done? No. It's nowhere near done because you still have 5 other milestones filled with small steps to do. However, you get the reward because you hit that checkpoint that you gave yourself, and your brain knows it. So we want our brains to remember organizing and productivity, whatever it is we want to be doing, remember it as fun, right? This kind of bleeds into the fifth part that we're talking about today, which is training your brain, right? We're kind of by creating that habit of small wins. So your brain wants to remember organizing and productivity, getting things done as being fun, not as being miserable. If we remember how miserable it was working through that whole storage unit, it took forever, it was just drudgery, then your brain is never going to want to organize another paper again because it remembers how miserable. So then even the smallest project of papers, your brain wants nothing to do with it. But if we give our brain those rewards as we go, then our brain's going to go, oh, that wasn't that bad. You know, I actually kind of liked that. That was enjoyable, or at least that was not terrible, right? So that's creating this habit of these small dopamine hits throughout the project with those small steps, and that trains your brain, right? That trains your brain that, oh, sorting papers is not that bad. I kind of even like it, maybe, almost, somewhat. I don't hate it, right? So when you come across organizing papers again in the future, your brain is not so resistant to it. Your brain can hop right into it and be okay with it. Just like the dog with the obstacle course, right? We created the habit of small wins. Every time it went through an obstacle, we gave it a treat. At the end, it got the T-bone. It felt good about itself. Now it has a great association with obstacle courses. We trained the dog to like, or at least not hate, the obstacle course because it had all these dopamine hits along the way. So it enjoyed doing the obstacle course. Bring it to an obstacle course again, it's more likely to want to do the obstacle course because it remembers that it was pretty good. It was not that bad. Same with us. So we're going to create those dopamine hits, the small steps. Each time you complete a step, acknowledge it. Acknowledge it. Take a moment and tell yourself, you know what? Good job. Like Melanie, right? You know what, Melanie? You did a really good job. You got the bag over to that area. And then the next small step, oh, Melanie, you did a great job. You labeled the bags. I'm sorry if I'm not saying exactly the steps. I don't have your comment in front of me, but I remember that you did it. But each small step, Melanie can be, you know, good job, Melanie. And then the brain is acknowledging, you know what? That's good. I get a little dopamine. I did that. You hit the milestone of all of the yard sale stuff is now out of the house, in the car, ready to be dropped off or whatever is happening to it, right? Maybe that's the milestone. And then, wow, you know, yes, there might be other things to do in the house, but that's a milestone. That's a big one. That's exciting. So each thing along the way is giving you some dopamine and training that, you know what, you can do this, you're good at this, you are successful at this, you did something meaningful, it was enjoyable because you kept getting these dopamine hits. The next time you've got a project, you're like, you know what, I can do that. I'm not as overwhelmed. I feel like I can do that. So we trained our brain that we can do it, and it's not that bad. And that also gives you those rewards faster instead of waiting for the end of the project, because that T-bone at the end is not as motivating as, hey, when I finish this step, I get a little 1-minute dance party and celebrate myself. That's more motivating because that's more immediate. So creating a habit of dopamine, small wins, and training your brain. Those are 2 other reasons that small steps are important. So before we wrap up, and I can show you one other way to do small steps that's super easy, I wanted to check the comments. Lori says, my project today is to clean the bathroom. Floor, tub, sink, toilet. Doing it listening to Suzanna now. Yes! And hopefully each of those steps, you know, do the floor, celebrate yourself. Do the tub, celebrate yourself. So each small step, make sure to celebrate yourself because it's really important. You're worth it. You're absolutely worth it. Tony says, this is so true. I recently went through a stack of papers after falling behind. It felt so good just to sort papers and get them in the appropriate areas in the action file. I felt so good. Yay! I love that. She says, then the next step was something light, like shredding another day. Now, next up, I know I need to do some filing, but for now, they're all in one folder, and I know when I'm ready, I can get right to it. And she says, also, I just dropped off my decluttered items at Goodwill. You're rocking it. Yes, 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 yes. I love it. And you can celebrate each of those steps and do a little step at a time. And in your action file, that's such a huge step. It makes such a big difference because it's ready for you when you're ready for that step. So, huge win. I love it. All right, so talking about the action file and such, that somewhat ties into the next part of our talk today. It's a really quick part, but I wanted to talk about, sorry, my computer just did something wonky. I wanted to talk about some of the ways, the easy ways to create small steps. So for a project, something like that, like I said, write out the milestones and then only really think about what are the steps for that first milestone, right? We don't need to plan out all of the steps before we get started. That is a waste of time because most of the steps towards the end are going to change because you're going to learn new things, you're going to make decisions, and it's going to affect all the things afterwards. Only worry about the first steps. 10 steps at the most. Usually I try to figure out, okay, what are the first 2 to 5 steps depending on the project. And that's all I really need to know. The next 2 to 5 steps. And then put the blinders on. Don't worry about the rest of the project. You're not there yet. It does not matter if there is 10,000 boxes of papers or 10 papers in the next steps. You're not there yet. Only focus on what you're working on, right? When you get to those, then you'll deal with those. So don't try to plan out all the steps for the entire project, even though it might feel fun, because then you're not actually doing the actions. You're too busy planning to take action instead of actioning. But also with something like decluttering, you can make it into a fun game, right? That's the small step cards. I wanted to talk about those really quickly because this is sort of another concept that helps break things down into small steps and uses a lot of what we talked about. So the small step cards I put in the chat. These are on sale. Today's the last day of the sale for 10% off. If you're a Pathfinder, you also get your member discount on top of that. So for you, it's 20% off. But go to the link if you wanted to get this for yourself or for somebody else. But the small step cards, it's a deck of 100 cards that each have a small step for decluttering on them. I still use these for myself all the time. Even though my house is not very cluttered, sometimes it gets a little cluttered, but even though it's not a problem in my house because I keep it relatively uncluttered, this keeps it that way. So this keeps each of the areas from getting too cluttered. It's way too easy when we organize and then we think we're good and done to not look at it again, and then clutter creeps in. So small step cards, 100 cards, each of them have a different tiny step for decluttering. Now, some of these, like choose 2 markers or highlighters that you no longer need. Find one old storage drive, like USB drive, photo, SD card, DVD that you can delete and then let go of. Pick 6 items in a desk drawer or utility area that you no longer need. So you see how each of these is super bite-sized. Most of these will take, maybe 5 minutes, 15 minutes tops. 5 things in your pantry that you won't really use, they expire. But you can draw one of these, and that can be your small step for the day, whatever the frequency is that you want. The reason that I'm bringing these up, though, is because you notice that none of these steps are an entire project. Like this one, locate 4 home improvement or repair items that you won't likely use and let them go. If your garage has a ton of stuff in it, then those 4 home improvement or repair items that you let go of are not going to make a big dent, right? So how is this helpful to only let go of 4? Well, When you use the small step cards or some system like this, let's look at it. First off, overwhelmed with a large project? When we're overwhelmed, like I said, one of the things that we do is we slip into paralysis a lot of times, right? Where we can't even get started. We don't even know where to start. When you're in paralysis, then just getting started is the hard part because you don't even know where to begin, right? If you have something that gives you a defined action, something small, something doable, it will get you moving. Once you get moving, it is much easier to get out of that paralysis, out of that overwhelm, right? Physically moving, even if you get moving doing something not related at all to the project that you're working on. Like do the dishes, it's going to be much easier after that to hop onto your computer and do your bookkeeping that you don't want to do, right? So this is something that will get you physically moving. That right there creates more energy and helps you continue on either continuing to organize home improvement items or your garage or something else. Do a small step card is going to give you energy to then go on and do whatever project that you need to do that you might be procrastinating on or just don't feel like doing. So it breaks down the overwhelm with a large project. Number 2, time commitment of a larger project. If you want to declutter your home, that's a huge time commitment, right? How can you break it down into tiny steps, tiny 15-minute chunks? Well, use small steps, such as the cards, to break it down into little 15-minute increments. If you do a card every day, then you will see a significant difference in your home very quickly. The nice thing is these cards, you can repeat them because by the time you get back to the 4 home improvement card, more stuff will have built up. So this helps keep your home uncluttered too. But the time commitment, breaking it down into the super small step, allowing yourself to only find 4 and then not have to organize in that area anymore. That is a small chunk that you can fit into a day, and it gives you permission. If you find 4, then good. Okay, great. I am done for the day with that, and that gives you dopamine hit, right? So this gives you the small win. You find the 4 items, your brain acknowledges that is something that deserves a reward. You did it. You completed it. Here's some dopamine, and now that does what? It trains your brain. So now your brain thinks of, oh, decluttering is more fun. I actually kind of enjoy decluttering. It's not a huge task that I have to do. It's not a million decisions and stress. It's, I find 4 things and my brain gives me a reward. I can keep doing that. So it trains your brain that organizing, decluttering, being productive is more fun. And it takes away the whole not knowing all of the future information. You don't need to know anything. All you need to know is draw, and the cards are going to tell you exactly what to do. So it removes that whole not knowing future information part of the equation. So with the small step cards and with small steps as a whole, but small steps remove the overwhelm of it being a large project, right? You can do it because it's now a smaller project. It does not seem as overwhelming. You know right where to start. Reduce the time commitment. Instead of doing the whole project, you can do just a small part of the project and be making some advancement moving forward, right? Not knowing all the future information. When it's a small step, it focuses on one task, one area, so you don't have to worry about what you might not know in the future. You can handle just what you're focusing on right now. Creates a habit of small wins. It gives your brain those checkpoints of, yes, I deserve a reward. I did it. I'm making progress. This is great. I want to keep going because I get that dopamine. I get that reward from my brain instead of big reward at the end that seems so far away. And that trains your brain. So that makes your brain think, oh, you know, decluttering's not that bad. Sorting through papers, it's not as terrible as I thought. Doing whatever productive task it is, I actually kind of enjoyed it. So your brain gets retrained, so it's not going to get into that overwhelm, that dread as much. You're going to make better decisions. You're going to enjoy it more, right? Not only that, but something like the small step cards, one of the things I love about these, most of the time when somebody is telling me about using their small step cards, they say something like, oh, I pulled the card, choose 2 markers or highlighters that you no longer need. And I found 2, but then I kept going. I hear that all the time. But then I kept going. I still had time. So I just went through all the markers and highlighters. I was able to get rid of, a large amount, whatever. I feel like I've got exactly what I need now. It got me started. So once you get started with a small step, sometimes when we are dreading doing it, just getting started, we realize it's not that bad, especially if you can relieve the pressure of having to finish the whole thing. You give yourself a small bite, and you only have to do the small bite, but once you've done the small bite, that dopamine kicks in, and now you're like, oh, you know what? This isn't that bad. I can do this. And you keep going. If you have the time, you keep going, because it's just getting moving is the hard part. So with the small step cards, one of the main reasons I designed those is to get you moving. Once you pull those 3 things, 1 thing, 5 things, once you find those, you are more likely to just keep going in that area and enjoy it. Sometimes I've had people, oh, I pulled 2 expired medications, and while I was in there, I did my whole linen closet, and it was fun. So breaking things down into small steps has so many benefits. Jennifer says, it reminds me of when I was younger, my mom would tell me what to do next when I was overwhelmed. Yes, exactly. It's what to do next. Your small steps are just those little tiny bites, and your mom was a genius. Yes, yes, yes. Well, there you go. Hopefully you enjoyed that. That is the whole psychological reasoning behind why I do small steps so much, because they truly, I was going to pull up my other banner, but I don't have it. They truly help get past overwhelm, get you moving, help you enjoy the process more, help you finish projects better and faster. It's kind of the key to it all, right? The action file is a way that we break down our papers, our active and incoming papers, into small steps. The Spark Life Binder and all the Spark Binders are how we break down, gathering all of our important information in one place into small steps. Everything I teach is based on small steps. You just might not realize it because we don't talk about the small steps as much, but it's all broken down into small steps. And that's because that's what makes it doable. So, what do you do today? Today, I hope you will take one small step towards whatever future goal it is that you want to do. Just one. You don't have to complete the whole thing, right? So, today, do a small step. Let me know in the comments later, or email me at hello@suzannakaye.com and tell me what small step you did today, so we can celebrate the fact that you were able to do a small step and move forward, because you will get to the end so much easier and more enjoyably and faster that way. I love you, beautiful. Keep it up. Remember, if you are interested in the physical action file, Spark Life Binder, or small step cards deck, for yourself or as a gift, I do offer the gift wrapping and shipping, then today is the last day for the sale. And today is the last day that we can be more sure that it will actually deliver before Christmas if you want it as a gift. So make sure to order it today. After today, it may or may not arrive in time for the holidays. You're so welcome, CJ. She says, thank you as always, Suzanna. Mindset shifts are the key, right? Absolutely. I love you, beautiful. Mwah. Pathfinders, I will see you in a couple minutes over at our Pathfinders Thursday Talks. And the rest of you, have a great weekend. I'll see you next week. Bye now.